In 1974, Eastern philosophy was all the rage in America. The boomers were getting older, questioning American values and looking everywhere for answers. 123 publishers rejected Robert Pirsig's novel Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, a rambling road trip narrative that chronicled the author's own struggles with the questions of existence and his own mental illness. One publisher took a chance, and the best-selling philosophy book of all time was born. The novel scratched an itch in the American mind of the 1970s. We wanted to see if it could still pack the same intellectual punch almost 50 years later. So, pour yourself a split personality cocktail and join us as we put it to the test. It's time for episode 28 of Toasting the Classics, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
And welcome back to another episode of Toasting the Classics. I am Clint Lanier.
Dave McArthur.
This is the show where we pick a creative subject. Aha, you like that?
A work of art.
That's right. Work of art, movie, poem rather, book.
One with purported status to classic.
Yeah. Other people, not nearly as knowledgeable as us, have picked these things and said, this is a classic. Held them up to all history. And we thought, are they really? In this show.
Originally, I intended to always have like some credibility to why it's a classic.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, this week's book, we didn't get it from any list. You were just like, it's a book I've heard of.
Yeah, it's a book I've heard of, right? So, so we're taking one of those things and we are dissecting it and invading it and, breaking it down, deconstructing it, if you will. And then we will decide whether it's a classic or not.
Right. We will decide whether to toast it.
And that brings us to the other part where we have a bit of booze. That makes it.
Something related.
The second half is always better once we busted into the booze a little bit, especially after Four Loko.
Yeah, I think we should start doing back-to-back episodes more often. By the way, Four Loko is banned. No more Four Loko.
No more Four Loko.
That is the first time since we've been doing this show that I have woken up the next morning. I've been like, I don't want to get out of bed.
I was a bit fuzzy the next
terrible.
day. That stuff is pretty terrible.
And I had one can.
Yeah, so
one can of that stuff.
I mean, to be fair, I think it was like a 24-ounce can, though.
It's a 20-ounce can, yeah, but still.
But still.
No, thank you.
So this week we are doing my pick, and it is Robert Pirsig's.
Robert Pirsig.
1974.
Do you ever come across somebody's last name every once in a while and you're just like, that's your real last name? It's not just like a random collection of letters? Like
Pirsig.
Pirsig.
Yeah, his, I think it's 74, right? 74 classic.
74 is what I have, yeah.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Right.
Where do we start?
I don't know. Let's just dive right in and talk about it. So I actually read this book years and years ago and it didn't leave a whole lot of substantive impression on me. Mm-hmm. But as I read the first half of the book, I was like, this book was a big influence on me. It just became kind of part of the way I thought. Because I read it when I was like, I think in late high school, like 16, 17 years old, something like that. And a lot of things that I've been fascinated with ever since kind of came out of like, I got this idea of what the West was like and stuff like that.
You keep talking. I'm going to pour us drinks. I'll talk about the drink.
We're going to dive right into the drink.
Yeah, I need a drink.
I also read the book Zen and the Art of Archery that this book is sort of patterned on. That the title is patterned on, and that the idea of finding Zen in a mundane activity. Well, archery, I guess, is not a mundane activity, but it's something where you can lose yourself in the practice of an activity, which is a very Zen concept. How much Zen do you think gets discussed in this book? Is it just me, or is it only expressly mentioned like maybe twice?
Well, it depends on how you define it. Okay. Zen, I think for him, is defined by doing, right? Zen is what Eminem talked about. Losing yourself in the moment. You own it. You better never let it go. Oh, that's Zen for all practical purposes. And so for him, Zen is doing something worthy of your time, right? Which to him, again, is like maintaining your motorcycle, working on an engine. It could also be the welder, because he remarked about the welder and his art and what he did and so forth. And so, I mean, Zen, he didn't talk about Zen in Buddhist. He really didn't. He brought it up a few times.
A few times he mentions Eastern philosophy, but I wrote it down. This is a 430-page book by my count, and he brought up Zen on page 324 for the first time.
Right.
And then he just was talking about it as one of the many other things that he talks about through the course of the book. He talks about meditation and how you're supposed to just sit is the point of Zen. I was hoping to get more Zen out of this book, so I didn't really I didn't bring a whole lot of Zen with me, although I used to be interested in it and think about it a lot more.
Yeah.
Like I said, I read Zen and the Art of Archery. I can't even remember whether I read that before this or after it, but
But I think any of those activities, like Zen and the Art of Archery, that's one of those activities where you just have to be completely in the moment, right?
Yeah, there's a sort of paradox in the way I look at it, because it's like, okay, you go out and you build a rock garden, or you clip a bonsai tree.
Okay.
And on the one hand, or you do archery.
What kind of tree?
Bonsai. So then you get out there, because you don't want to confuse it with bonsai, which is how Americans say it. Bonsai means like, divine wind, long live the emperor. That's a completely different concept. You do these things, and there's a combination of being hyper mindful to the task,
right,
but also losing oneself by being hyper mindful to the task and letting something else complete the task. Like when you fire an arrow, according to this book, Zen and the Art of Archery, as I recall, you don't shoot the arrow, you let it shoot the arrow. And it's like I feel like there's a paradox between those two things. It's like you're so mindful that your mind is gone.
In terms of maintaining your motorcycle, though, he says that's what it is. When your hands are doing something and you don't realize, you don't think about what they're doing. They are working on the engine. They are doing the maintenance of this motorcycle.
Right.
And you're totally disconnected from
Except did you catch his methodology about working on a motorcycle? Which is like he's got a system of everything in the motorcycle can be split into these two categories all the way down to every single tiny part. And then what he does is he uses the scientific method to troubleshoot.
Right.
And he goes through it. And it's like totally not anything Eastern religion.
He doesn't do that, because he says you can start there, but there are also the what does he call them? The proofs or the axioms, these a priori things that are also part of it. Because when he was talking about the scientific method, he was talking about the difference between the classical and the romantic, right? The two halves or the two sides.
He's talking about his notebook, and he would get his notebook out and try and troubleshoot the problem by starting at the most basic level.
I think he was saying you could. I think he was saying a person could do that.
Yeah.
But then he said the problem happens when that screw gets stripped out.
Right.
Well, then your notebook and all of your theory, it all goes to hell at that point.
Right.
You have to have a priori knowledge. You have to sit back and then just meditate on what it could be to try to come up with alternative solutions to the problem, because the scientific method would not lead you to those alternative. Only the romantic part would lead you to those, basically the a priori knowledge. But before we do that, let's tell people what this book is about.
So this book is essentially, well, I'll get into what it calls to mind later, because it kind of gives away the conclusion, what it calls to mind. But it's basically about, the plot anyway, the framing of the story is that a man living in the 1970s who was formerly a professor, going on a road trip with his son from Minneapolis across to California through Montana, wandering around a couple different places.
Motorcycle road trip, yeah.
Motorcycle road trip. And just kind of ruminating while he rides. And through that story of driving places and visiting places where he'd had a former mental break, sort of letting us into the thought process that led to that mental break. And then, I don't know, do we want to just talk about what happens at the end right away?
I think we're going to have to.
We have to because of the drink.
We have to spoil everything.
We have to because of the drink, right? So at the end, essentially has like the font changes, and you can see that his former personality before his cure reasserts itself, takes over, and somehow that makes him and his son happy again. Which clearly, the relationship was bad all through the book with this guy that was constantly ruminating, like I said. And I was thinking like that. The son barely gets characterized. You barely know anything about the kid. He gets like 5 or 6 lines every now and then.
Well, until the end. And then you find out that he seems to be having the same problems, mental problems, that the father does.
Right.
Right. And so you can see he's treating him different. He's treating him kind of a certain way throughout.
He seems to just kind of ignore the kid, though.
Yeah.
He seems to spend all of his time sitting on the bike thinking about what, not to dismiss it completely, because it didn't it's not as if it didn't fail to lead me to some interesting thoughts, but most of it was just garbage thought, it sounded like. It was just rambling on and on. And I'm like, you ruined your life over this? This is not even a good philosophy. This is just like the kind of stuff that people say to get themselves published. It doesn't even mean anything.
You need to work where I work.
Well, I imagine I'd be very frustrated with it, but it's rooted in Plato, who I always found to be irritating, the idea of the forms and things like that. It just seemed like metaphysical garbage. Now, I do enjoy his dialogues. They're thought-provoking. And sometimes I think that's the point. Like you read a Platonic dialogue and it's just supposed to get you thinking, and maybe Plato didn't intend, these to be actual arguments for anything. Sometimes I think that. I remember reading The Republic and I was thinking, these arguments are such garbage. I think that he actually is just trying to get you to think and doesn't care whether you come to any. Like his conclusions are so weak and based on such, I don't know, or maybe he just lived 2,500 years ago, and I can't really relate to somebody that thinks that there's a world of forms. Do you remember when we read Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah.
And the Stoic philosophy that has come down to us is kind of like an interesting thing about how to live your life and how to, but then every once in a while this other stuff would come through, this metaphysical Greek stuff, garbage that was all over the place about like magical spheres flying through the air and stuff like what are you talking about? Yeah. How did you come up with that? All the rest of this is good. Stick with that. Stop talking about the magical floating spheres, you know.
But it's, you know, it's back to what we were talking about, I think maybe in that dialogue or previous, about not being able to relate to the context within which these people lived. Yeah,
the Greeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
well, this guy falls prey to something that I hear all the time, which is he's talking about, we have a society that's based on the Greeks. And I'm like, no, it isn't. It totally isn't. We read 5 or 6 books that ever belong to the Greeks. We get a little bit of inspiration in our civilization. Our civilization is not based on the Greeks.
No,
they were a totally foreign culture.
Western civilization started with the Greeks, though.
This is true, but it's
and
not.
I think that's what he's talking about.
I think he's giving them too much. I think he's drawing too strong of a line from us to them. I think people overdo that. Mm-hmm. We're so different from them.
Well, yeah.
Whereas different, like
he's not. For
instance, someone would say, "Oh, someone from China is so different from us, and we're rooted in the Greek tradition." I'm like, I guarantee people in China are more like me and you today than we are like the Greeks by 1,000,000 years.
I don't think he's saying that we're like the Greeks. He's saying that Western thought is founded in Greek philosophy.
Yeah, he said something. If the idea of truth hadn't been rediscovered by the Renaissance, we'd be living in the Stone Age. And I'm like, we weren't living in the Stone Age before the Renaissance. The Middle Ages was not the Stone Age. Mm-hmm. It's just like an overwrought idea of the thread of Western civilization.
Most everything has to have an origin somewhere, and I think most people agree that the Greeks are kind of the foundation of where we get our ideas from. I mean, sure, our ideas are different now, but 1,000 years ago, our ideas were probably close to the Greeks, different from what we have now. But I mean, we stood on somebody's shoulders to get where we are now. Yeah. And the argument is just that the Greeks had most to do with it.
Compared to anybody else in the world in 500 BC.
Sure.
100%.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's all that much going to us from them. You know, there's a few things, a few ideas.
You know, he's right in the sciences. I mean, his argument is that, you know, scientific method essentially and scientific thinking, objectivity, these types of things come from Aristotle. Before that, the sophists had a different way of thinking about things. Mm-hmm. This thing called quality that he labels quality, where it was kind of a bridge between, you know, this what he calls romantic and classical, but what they would call like art and science, or actually techne and art. It was kind of one or the other. Aristotle was all in for techne, denigrated the arts, as did Plato. And so, you know, he created kind of this rational thought, scientific method, objectivity, and that's where we are today. I mean, that was in 74. It was a lot closer to that than we are now. I mean, we've become much more relative, postmodernism, post-structuralism. These kind of movements really only came out after Pirsig.
I remember
a
teacher,
things.
I wrote something in my freshman composition class, and I said something about the scientific method, and my teacher... This is where I realized that there's two different, completely different worlds intellectually in like academia. He said, well, there's a lot of questions about the scientific method since Einstein did his thing. And I was like, I thought about it because I really respected this guy. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I thought about it, and I was like, that's a really dumb thing. That doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. What method do you think Einstein used to come up with the theory of relativity?
And Einstein made leaps, though. He made leaps, and
But it was all borne out by scientific observation
afterwards.
You know?
Afterwards,
right.
You know, he would come up.
But that's the method.
He would come up with his hypothesis as a law, and then they would prove it afterwards. You know,
right? But it didn't call into question this. It just, I mean, relativity just doesn't have anything.
Well, theoretical
relativity has nothing to do with, I guess, what you're saying, which is like cultural relativism, right? Like relativity in physics doesn't have anything to do with that. I think that's just somebody that doesn't know what relativity is.
No, relativity, I mean, like, theoretical physics is fairly relative. It's not something that you can really quantify. I mean, you've got particles that they're not there when you look at them. They're only there when you don't look at them.
That's the weird thing is you can predict with it.
You can supposedly predict, but you can't. Theoretical physics is very theoretical. It's not something that you can you can't really see it. You can't really observe a lot of these things. It's all theory.
Well, but the weird stuff, right? The weird stuff, like the stuff that this guy was talking about that happened after the turn of the century, like relativity and quantum physics, is like we can't have a cell phone without those things. I mean, that's definitely you're like concrete science. You know, I mean,
totally right.
I was just like, there's a way that people who are in the liberal arts side of things talk about these things.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, even though that's kind of my bent in terms of my interest, usually tend to be the liberal arts. I was like, I don't think like them. I think like the people on the science side. I have trouble with people using wishy-washy, this talking about quality. And he says, Hegel talked like this. And I was like, yeah. And you know what Schopenhauer said about Hegel? He said his work was just senseless, meaningless webs of language. And I was like, that is 100% true. When you read Hegel, you're like, it's a bunch of garbage. It doesn't even mean anything. You have to spend your whole life learning to understand what he's talking about. And then by then you're like so invested in it that you have to think he's right. Otherwise, you just wasted the last 20 years of your life. Yeah. Learning what he's talking. You know, there's a lot of people like Jacques Lacan. There's a lot of people like that I just.
So you didn't like the Chautauqua, as he calls it. That's not Chautauqua's.
I don't know. I wouldn't have minded some of sitting around talking with this guy over a campfire with a cup of whiskey would have been kind of fun. Yeah. But sometimes kind of like too wrapped up in his own head. So what are we drinking this week?
So this is called a split personality cocktail.
Okay.
A little play on Mr. Pirsig.
A little play on the end of the story.
Right.
So that's what I was thinking. Is this reminded me of Fight Club?
Okay.
At that part where he suddenly at the end, it's like not super concretely stated that he's had a break, but you can read it when you're careful.
Yeah.
And the sort of rambling ideas about Western civilization and stuff like that. It's very critical about cities and
materialism
and things like that. It's very vain.
I was wondering if he got any ideas from this book. I was wondering actually how much influence this book had on other things that we.
I have a great one for the end for my best surprise for influence, which dawned on me 3/4 of the way through the book. I was like, oh, this was a big influence on somebody.
Yeah,
and I actually followed a little Google rabbit hole, and I was like, oh yeah, this was a big influence.
For sure,
anyway, we'll talk about that when it comes to my big surprise.
So. Moving the conversation, this is actually kind of autobiographical. So this all happened to Pirsig.
Yeah.
He did have a mental break. He was a professor of
Even
rhetoric.
the second part actually happened, like all this?
Yeah, I mean, he had a mental break. I don't know if the reconciliation, which happens at the end, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it happened, or I don't know. But he had a forced electroshock therapy. Yeah, that was something that
just like in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, and that was something that the government could force you to do.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that wild? And
they were sterilizing people not long before that.
Right, no, that's true.
Because that kind of shocked me how old he was. Because he's got this young son, and where it tipped me off is he said something about talking to someone. He was like, I was talking to these Negroes, and I was like, whoa, talking to what? What did he just say? Right. And that's when I went and looked up how old is this guy. I was like, okay, he's like almost 50.
Yeah.
So he's born in 1928.
Well, he fought in Korea, so that would have been
There's a couple of cues
like
that show that he's really not a baby boomer.
No.
He's
before
30s, right? 1928 he was
28,
born.
Okay, yeah.
So he's like a much older generation where I was putting him as a boomer because it felt like 1974. It's like not much older than my dad. Figured he was like 30 and had a kid that age, but no, he's much older, older dad. And then had another kid later. I was thinking about that kid. He says he wanted to start a school where people could come to the school and just fail out and then wander through life and like come back.
Yeah.
And I was thinking I totally get that. I've gone back and done some education as I've gotten older, and it's always worth a lot more. But the problem with that is that for most people, life intercedes.
Yeah.
You were 24, your life is already different than it was when you were 19. Maybe you've had a kid, maybe you've gotten married, and all of a sudden things are getting more complicated. You have to work. You can't dedicate your time to education. I'm like, that's why we kind of want people to get educated between 18 and 22 because they have the time to get educated then. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you don't. You can come back and do it later, but it's not that easy. You wouldn't want to plan everyone's life around, just wander back to school when you're 30.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I mean,
so what are we? Did you say what we're drinking?
Yeah, it's a split personality cocktail.
Oh, right. We said what it's called. Okay, but what's in it?
Found it on YouTube because I was trying to find something that kind of matches the theme.
I was trying to find it because we didn't get in touch to talk about the ingredients of the cocktail. So I was trying to look it up, and I was getting things from Pinterest and like 5 different sources of something called. And so I was like, I can't. I don't know which one.
Yeah, my apologies. So it's essentially a mango margarita.
Okay.
With chimayo salsa in it. Do you know what chimayo salsa is?
Is chimayo the stuff that goes into like a michelada? Is that the stuff that?
No, chimayo is it's that red chili salsa that people from Mexico, typically in Mexico, pour over fruit, oftentimes mangoes.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see a mango and they'll have like this salsa poured over it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a sweet sour type of thing. It creates a savory sweet. So that's what this is. There's about an ounce and a half of tequila, and then mango puree, a little bit of orange juice, a little bit of lemon juice, and then this Chimayo salsa.
What are the ingredients of a margarita? I know it's tequila. What else?
Tequila, lime juice, and triple sec.
Oh, triple sec.
That's a traditional one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah. So a little bit of a difference. But if you taste it, so it's got kind of a floater of that Chimayo on top. You'll taste it, and it'll be that kind of sweet and savory.
That's not bad. Have you had? I think it's tamarind.
Mm-hmm.
You get candies that have tamarind on it. That's not a taste I'm super fan.
Well,
this is better to me.
This recipe actually calls for a tamarind rim.
Okay, yeah.
But I just
didn't
didn't want to do that.
No, I've gotten candy before that had that just because I was like, oh, I want to try that. That's a big Mexican thing. That was not my favorite.
It's
Mexican savory delight.
It's an acquired taste. My wife loves this stuff. By the way, she's Hispanic. Grew up on the border and really enjoys it. So I made one for her and left it at home with her. It's not bad, huh?
No, I don't really taste the mango super strongly. It's there, but it's a hint of mango.
Right.
It's not smacking me in the face with you're eating a mango.
So I was interested at how, again, autobiographical it was. I was interested also in the fact that he is a technical writer.
Yeah.
And he was a professor of rhetoric.
Yeah, I was wondering if you knew that when you picked the book.
No, I didn't.
I was like, is this just inside baseball?
So I was a technical writer.
Right.
And I became a professor of rhetoric.
I was thinking in the first bit when I started reading, and it was about the guy going on a road trip with his son, I was thinking, oh, maybe you picked this because you're thinking about me. And then he turns out to be a professor of rhetoric, and I was like, no, you're thinking about yourself. And I was like, maybe we just picked the book randomly.
I knew nothing about it. I remember that this is a huge book in the 70s and 80s, like early 80s up to like mid-80s.
Yeah.
Everybody was reading this book. You know, in the 70s, there was a big kind of awakening of kind of an inward turn that people had.
Okay.
Working on themselves and, being mindful and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, in the 80s, then you got Namaste and everything else. I remember this book being kind of in the zeitgeist.
Yeah. My dad had this book. That's why I read it. I went through his old books one time and found the ones that I was like, oh, these seem like something I should read. And this is one of the ones I pulled aside.
Right.
Also, the Portable Nietzsche, which was a disaster. I tried reading that. I was like, he saw me holding the book. He was like, you're not going to understand a word of it. And he was completely right. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Well, at least you tried.
At least I tried, yeah.
But, so, I mean, I picked the book. I knew it was a classic. I knew it was something, I knew it was purported to be a classic.
Purportedly a classic,
yeah.
Right.
And again,
we're going to decide that tonight.
Yeah, of course. Well, you'll decide it. That's why I picked it. It was really dragged. God, it dragged in so many places.
Sometimes.
The endless Chautauqua. So the Chautauqua, by the way, listeners, so he starts out on this motorcycle, and then he starts, as Dave said, starts ruminating.
Right.
And having these long philosophical discussions as if giving a lecture, which is what a Chautauqua is. Chautauqua is kind of this spoken vocal conference or presentation where you exchange ideas and so on and so forth. And so that's what he's supposedly doing, is he's thinking to himself. It's a first-person narrative, and he's kind of like the God narrator. So he's giving us all these problems, and as he works along, you start getting these little hints that things are a little bit different maybe than it all seems. Like he starts talking about this guy named Phaedrus, who was this guy that was obsessed with finding a philosophical answer to the question, what is quality? Again, you later find out that Phaedrus was his other personality. It was the precursing personality to the person that is talking to you now.
Right.
The person that is talking to you now is a result of electroshock therapy and being in a mental hospital. Okay.
So about Chautauqua, before we go any further.
Yeah.
So did you ever read, or I think it's a play, but did you ever read Inherit the Wind? About the Scopes monkey trial. That's where I encountered that word for the first time. It's like talking about, like you said, like it's sort of like a traveling meeting tent for people to argue
Mark Twain. It was big
politics.
with Mark Twain.
Yeah.
He used to do those all the
So we were in class, 9th grade English class. I still remember this. And the teacher says, she calls on my friend, Justin, out of nowhere, out of the whole class. And she's like, do you know what Chautauqua means? And he was like, yes, I think it's an Iroquois word that means bag tied in the middle. And she was like, what? Everybody was just like quiet for a second. And he was like, yeah. And then everybody's really impressed. And afterwards he was like, my grandparents live on Lake Chautauqua up in upstate New York. And
nice.
so I always knew that word. It was just so random. I was like, that was the best moment to like shine. Like
that was awesome.
Hit the ball out of the park.
Especially he probably didn't do anything before class at all. So
I don't know. I don't know whether he actually read the material or not, but it was
But it's so he's doing this, goes along with this motorcycle. He uses motorcycle maintenance as his kind of entryway or way to relate what he's saying. So
yeah, he uses it as a thing that he knows deeply, cares about deeply, has put a lot of thought into, like a real life thing.
But that it's easy for the reader to relate to, right?
Sure,
because it's he always brings it back to motorcycle maintenance, no matter what he's talking about. When he finally kind of gets down to Zen and talking about what Zen is, and he never really says this is what Zen is,
right?
But it's talking about maintaining your motorcycle as a part of to get to a place where you are at one with maintaining the motorcycle, if that makes sense. So you're not invested in anything else. You're just doing the motorcycle. Mm-hmm. That's all you're thinking about. And he does this every time they stop. Every time he stops, he checks the spark plugs, he checks the chain, and he tells you, I did this, and then I did this, and I did this. And so he's actually meditating, essentially, I think. Yeah. Every time they stop, it's kind of a proof of concept type of thing. And so as the story goes, you find out that, like I said, he was Phaedrus. Mm-hmm. That was his previous personality. He starts...
Did you think that for someone that thinks he knows a lot about motorcycles and spends a lot of time maintaining his motorcycle and talking about his motorcycle, that his motorcycle ends up having a lot of problems? Like his motorcycle breaks down over and over again.
So he had an old Honda.
Is that it's just an old bike is the problem?
His friend had a brand new BMW.
Right.
He had a Honda, and in fact, the Smithsonian bought that Honda.
Oh, neat.
Put it in the Smithsonian.
I'd go see that.
It's
probably down.
It's like a 1968 Nighthawk. No, it wasn't a Nighthawk. It was
this
something
is only
Hawk.
a 6-year-old bike, and it broke down this much.
Well, this is 1974.
See, the funny thing is he said something about it was a dig at the quality of Japanese manufacturing. Right. And I had to remember, I was like, oh, yeah, Japanese stuff used to be considered
junk.
Like junk. Yeah. And it was like, by the time I was growing up, if you bought an American car, you were a fool.
Well, we talked about that last time. It was Doc Brown's like, here's why the time machine's messed up. This chip is made in Japan.
Right.
It's like, what are you talking about? All the best stuff comes from Japan.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. That must be in 3 or something.
That was in 1.
Is it in 1?
Yeah, it was in 1.
Oh, I don't remember that.
When he's first looking at the car and everything's all messed up on the time machine.
I'm gonna go on the record as saying that line must be from 2 or 3 because I know 1. I think I know 2. I'm pretty sure it's from 3. I'd like to do an on-air bet.
Okay.
We could pause the recording and look up that quote.
Okay. We're gonna do that, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna pause the recording.
No wonder this circuit failed. It says made in Japan.
What do you mean, Doc? All the best stuff is made in Japan.
There we go. So the scene does exist, but as you can hear from the echoey, creepy music in the scene, it's where they find the car underground in the mine in part 3. Because Doc left it from the Old West. Well, it's because it's in 1955, and most of their interactions are in 50.
I think that kind of biased, I guess, existed, obviously. So I think his bike was a 60s model, late 60s model Honda.
Okay.
And I don't know if motorcycles were meant to be driven thousands and thousands of miles back then. I mean, you really had to
probably not. No.
Really had to work on them, tighten things up, do everything that he was doing. I mean,
well, also the roads weren't as good back then.
Yeah, didn't really. And he never took highways or freeways. Yeah, he never took freeways.
Can you imagine not being able to find where you're going?
Right.
Like they're just guessing where the roads
go.
Look
at a map. Looking at the map, and I think this is how to get there.
I'm old enough to remember road tripping with a map, though. Going on a road trip and not driving all the way to California.
We used to buy an atlas.
Using
buy a road atlas.
Paper road atlas, yeah.
Absolutely.
My kids would be like, what is
that? Yeah.
My son loves the paper road atlas, but I don't think he could imagine relying on it. Like not being able to find your way unless you saw the road
atlas. The hardest part was navigating large cities with a paper map. That is not freaking easy at all.
Difficult.
I remember doing that in Brisbane, Australia. Honolulu, New York, all over the place.
But also we plotted I went on this road trip with my friends and we plotted our entire journey across the country, just eyeballing it. Mm-hmm. Like Google tells you what's the most efficient route to go across the country now. Whereas we were like, oh, well, we kind of want to go to Chicago. Right. So we went up to Chicago, then we went down to St. Louis, New Orleans,
not efficient
San Antonio.
Yeah, not efficient.
Up to the Grand Canyon, then down to L.A.
Not efficient, but it was a great road trip.
It was an amazing road trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially one of these days, I think I should set to paper the story of that road trip. The personalities involved and everything about it was just terrific. Just chef's kiss. You can't see me doing it, but chef's kiss for all-time road trips. So
the 2 things that really annoyed me. he kept what he called his motorcycle. Do you remember? The cycle.
Okay.
And the machine. The machine was cooling down next to the road.
Right.
When you have a cycle like this.
Does he never say bike?
No, he never says bike.
Okay.
Never says bike. Never says motorcycle. He always calls it a cycle or machine, which is annoying as hell.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just really started grating on me. But I wonder if he was doing that on purpose, because he makes that whole soliloquy about his friends not liking machines.
Right.
You know?
Right. Machine puts it in its place as a piece of technology.
Right.
Not confusing it with bike. The other day I told somebody, I rode my bike over here, and they're like, cool.
You got a bike?
What do you ride?
Nice.
I was like my bicycle. Like, this is not a cool. I'm not trying to sound cool. Like, I rode my bicycle over here. Like,
Murray, what kind you got?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's a really old mongoose from 1996 or 1995.
This is the one you've crashed multiple times?
This is the one I crashed multiple times, yeah. It's been through a lot.
Always because you're drinking, or normally because you're drinking?
No.
Actually, you crashed sober.
Yeah, I crashed it sober on the way over here. No, there was no drinking involved.
Only on the way back.
No, it's that bike is like my R2-D2 when Luke just doesn't want another astromech droid because he's been through so much with it. I'd rather fix my old astromech than get a new one. So
great analogy.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes, exactly. Always bring it back to Star Wars. So he's headed out to Montana. He's headed to Bozeman eventually. And they go across Montana from Minnesota and the Dakotas, and then down across this place called the Beartooth Pass, which he doesn't call it that, but I went there last summer, and it was like spectacular.
Was it a Horsetooth?
It's a Beartooth Pass. He doesn't mention that name, I don't think, but I looked it up a couple of the towns because I was like, that sounds like the place I was, and I looked at it totally is. It goes like way above the tree line, and it's just like spectacular
That's
views.
Yellowstone, is that right?
It's just north of Yellowstone.
okay.
If you exit Yellowstone from the east,
okay,
you can head up this road and cut into Montana. You go through Wyoming and then up into Montana, and you go over these like amazing mountains. I mean, just I have these great pictures of the kids climbing on the rocks and stuff up there. But it was like it's like 11 or 12,000 feet. It's way high up, like really high up. I was just there last summer, and him talking about it again. I was like, I should go back to Montana. Like, I really love it out. Maybe my favorite part of the world.
Right.
I just love that part of the world. It's amazing. Those gigantic, sharp mountains and everything like that. So I think this book sort of whetted my appetite for going there.
Maybe this is like subconsciously there though.
Yeah.
Because you take your son, you take Alex everywhere. All the time. So
I do. He's like my little buddy for these adventures.
Yeah.
I'm kind of worrying what's going to happen when he gets bigger. If he's going to like not want to hang out, that would not be fun. We'll see.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
That is the worst.
I was really jealous of how much he knows about the weather. Like he's talking about the weather in the first part of the book, and I was like, that actually draws, and it just started as just an idle comment, but I'm thinking it draws the distinction between the kind of knowledge I think is useful and interesting and talking like Hegel.
Okay.
Talking about the weather, I'm interested. I'm like, oh, what do you know about the weather? And it's like actual facts,
Right.
things like that can give you information about tomorrow.
Right.
And talking about Hegel is just like, boy, don't we feel smart while we're talking about Hegel.
Sure.
It's like you didn't come up with anything, you know? You're running off on a tangent. Like, does he talk about Alfred North Whitehead and the footnotes on all of Western philosophy as a series of footnotes to Plato?
I don't think so.
Did he mention that in here? Anyway.
Maybe he did.
But it feels like that when you read. So you're like, oh, this is just like inside baseball talking about dialectic. I'm like, what are you even talking about anymore?
At the end, he really gets into Plato, really gets into Aristotle, Socrates, Sophists.
Talks about Kant.
I was really thinking at the end that, man, this is like deep stuff for people who know this stuff. You know? And I sort of know the stuff.
Do you think it's that? Do you think it's designed for people? Because that's one level, right? It's just references to people that already know this stuff. But is it also designed to sort of hoodwink people who don't know anything about it?
That's a good question.
He's talking about Kant and Kant's like definition of like a priori time.
See,
and I don't think he's getting this stuff right. And the whole thing, like, I don't know if your preface included this, but Phaedrus does not mean wolf.
Right.
You know, like I don't even really know ancient Greek, and I was like, I think I know what wolf is in Greek.
Yeah,
like I think I know this. I think it's in lycanthrope, right?
Yeah.
Lycos for wolf. I mean,
probably.
So I was like, that's not what Phaedrus means, but it's a pretty big mistake. I feel like is it designed to just put one over on people that don't know any better?
No, he made a mistake. He said on the forward that I had, it was he acknowledged that that's not what it meant. That he made a mistake.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I don't think it's meant to hoodwink anybody. So the genre. Do you know what the genre is? What they call this genre? It's philosophical fiction. Okay.
Okay. Which is not as ridiculous. There are books like that.
Right.
So there's a handful.
Well, and this is his kind of philosophical treatise. That's what it is. I mean, he's trying to work it out. But they are his beliefs. These are the things that he believes as a philosopher or as a rhetor or whatever you want to call him. Things that he's come to a conclusion about. I think something like the weather, that's a really good example of the quality piece that he's pursuing, because it's a bridge between the classical and the romantic, or it's a piece between the techne and the art. Talking about the weather, it's something useful. However, you can talk about it very factually. But he was also talking about it in terms of the way something looks and the way it makes you feel. He was always talking about, I was getting depressed and so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But then he was also talking about it insofar as it was useful to know this stuff because...
Well, the part where he's in the classroom and he takes everybody's essays and has everybody look at them and like decide which ones are good and which ones are bad. Mm-hmm. And he uses that to prove that everyone can recognize a thing called quality and agree on what it is.
Right.
And so, it's, again, not to keep bashing Plato's theory of the forms, but that's what that is. Mm-hmm. It's like saying that there's this thing out there everyone can recognize in this thing, and it's the form, outside the cave of quality. And I'm like, well, what people are really recognizing, I guarantee if you were to quiz them and look at them, what they're recognizing is the techne. They're recognizing people making mistakes, using lousy words, repeating things, run-on sentences. And if you have too much of that, people are going to agree it's not very good.
I would disagree with that.
But I think as long as you get the techne right, people will disagree about the quality of the work. Some people will say, "Oh, I really like this argument," and other people will say, "I don't like this argument."
Yeah.
You're not going to get the same correlation if people are, if you're following your Strunk and White and getting your techne right when you're writing. Mm-hmm. People are going to say, "Oh, this guy's a better writer."
The problem with that is you have things like On the Road, where you have almost stream of consciousness sometimes,
right?
Where it's not classical argument. There's not a logical structure.
What book did we talk about? It was in Catcher in the Rye, where he's very careful to occasionally set aside chunks of prose where he shows, I know how to write.
Yeah, I know how to write.
I'm not doing this because I don't know how to write.
Yeah.
And I don't remember Jack Kerouac doing as much of that. I think he really just leans into.
No, that's what he wanted to do.
But occasionally he puts together a really beautiful, well-written.
But he can write.
Yeah,
but he can write.
Of course, yeah. It's like Picasso. It's like
my
Picasso
argument.
painting.
My argument. So there are composition professors and people that teach rhetoric who think a lot like. He sort of talks about it a little bit, where allow your classroom to be kind of this lab and allow students to write whatever they want to write, however they want to write it. Mm-hmm. There's no wrong answer type of thing. So that's their argument. And they hold up people. There's an author named Ansel Dewis. She's famous for border rhetorics and frontier rhetorics, they call it, and so forth. And she was a Hispanic. I think her family's from Mexico. So in a lot of her writing, she switches back and forth between English and Spanish, and has these forms that are more similar to forms that you would find in Spanish writing, even though she's writing in English and stuff like that.
Hemingway does that in For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah, Hemingway.
It took me a while to realize.
Hemingway kind of does it too.
Thou.
Yeah,
he keeps saying thou, and
Hemingway kind of does that as well. And so they point at people like that and say, see, students can do that. But my argument, and I think we've talked about this before.
It's possible. We're starting to go over some of the same stuff.
Because I talk about it when I talk about Picasso. It's like you've got to know the rules before you can break them.
We talked about
and like
absolutely.
Like Picasso. So
but you have to know the rules, right? Picasso was a genius. Picasso figured out all the rules of painting on his own without a whole lot of form. I think he did get some formal education.
He did,
but he had it pretty much nailed.
By the time he was 12, he was painting like a master.
Right. So that's a different story than your average person. Your average person is going to need to go to school to get their techne chops.
Well, right. And so my argument is that if you treat the composition classroom where they can just write whatever they want, however they want to write it, you're doing a disservice. Allow them to find their voice, but show them, okay, these are all the rules. So these are the lines that you can paint out of.
Yeah,
but you got to know what the lines are.
When you're rejecting a rule, you need to have a reason for doing it. We talked about Terry Pratchett, the last episode that I did with Chris, that was our interim episode. And Terry Pratchett keeps putting together paragraphs and then not indenting the paragraph when he switches speaker. And I honestly couldn't find out why he was doing it. I was like, I know he knows better. So there's got to be a reason behind it, but I couldn't find it, and it was super annoying to me. I was having trouble telling who was talking. And that's the kind of thing, it's like, okay, if you're going to reject that, please explain to me. You don't have to explain to me why, but I need there to be a reason.
Right.
You don't know how to indent a paragraph. Can't be the reason. That's not going to work for me. Like I think a lot of what he's talking about is like a revolution in teaching that you and I never experienced. I don't think, or anyway, I didn't. Maybe we're in different school systems, so I don't know. But I always grew up with a little more free-form educational system. It always shocked me when I'd go to a classroom and I'd have a teacher, and there were usually someone from another country who would do the way Aristotle would teach, which is like, there are 7 emotions in the world.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what? Like, because my upbringing, my education was always, don't make a statement like that. Before we say, why? Where are these 7? Do you have any other suggestions for what they could? Because I don't want to have a discussion based on that. And I found, like, I went to school in the Middle East for a little while at a small university there, and that was the way they taught. They'd come out to you and they'd say, these are the things. Right. And my first thought would be like, the heck they are. What are you talking? I want to have a conversation about these lists you're giving me constantly. It's Aristotle. It's the influence of Aristotle in the teaching. Totally still exists in a lot of the world, or at least it did. It did, 20 or 30 years ago. I don't know if things have revolutionized since then, but it's that part of the revolution in teaching I'm super interested in and super sympathetic towards. But not so much like what you're saying, where you just don't have any rules. Because I think people need to know the rules. If they're going to reject them, that's fine, but you do need to know the rules. There's reason. Yeah. Clarity in writing suffers if you don't have any rules.
Well, and we've taken a turn in the last 20 years in the U.S. insofar as education goes. You know, I've taught, more than a few students, international students. I've been on their dissertation committees especially from the Middle East and from China, and they're having a real problem teaching students English composition, and conversational English over there, because what they do is they teach students the rules. Right. Strictly the rules. Like these are the grammar rules. Yeah. And these are the rules in conversation. And that's it. But there's so much nuance that they don't teach. They never teach it within context.
Yes.
So they'll give them a test of the rules.
Right.
They'll say, what's the difference between a prepositional phrase and whatever, and what's a modifier and what's a verb, blah, blah, blah. So they'll teach them the rules, and they take a test on the rules, but they never actually have to write a sentence or write a paper, rather, never really have to have a conversation to pass their classes. So these people graduate with quote unquote, knowing English, and go to get a job, and they're terrible. Companies find out that they know nothing about it.
And I think people play this. It is a huge intellectual achievement to speak another language, to really speak another language, especially something as different as if you're a Chinese speaker learning English or an Arabic speaker learning English or something. I think people play that down. I think it's just like some little skill you can learn. And it's really, not everybody can do it, not really learn to speak it. I'm always amazed. My wife came here to America when she was 9 and didn't speak a word of English. And I just talk to her every day in English. We just speaking. Sometimes I forget that. And it's a really, really impressive achievement to do that. Now, she was young, but still, I mean, just to develop that level of achievement in a foreign language is a really spectacular thing. I had a guy, when I was in Jordan, this guy came up to me one day and he said, Arabic is a more poetic language than English. And I was like, okay. And he was like, for instance, English only has 4 words for love. Arabic has 75. And I was like, I would beg to differ about that. I mean, I don't know how many. I can't speak intelligently about the corpus of Arabic love poetry, but I could tell you there's a lot more ways in just Shakespeare to refer to love than 4.
Well, that's the point. It's like
But if you learn things by rote, that's the kind of statement you end up making.
There's a difference between words and expressions. Like we might have maybe 4 words for love, but we have an infinite number of expressions to demonstrate love or something like that.
Exactly. And that's one of the contributions that something like poetry and drama makes, is giving us more ways to refer to things. So, giving me some Chimayo. Top of my thing.
Absolutely.
So have you ever read any of these books that are like the philosophy of Star Trek, or religion and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that? There's all these books like this that you see at the store. I think this book is where those books come from.
Do you want to try that? Just see what it tastes like.
Yeah, sure.
Pretty good, right? Like salty, chili.
Yeah, it is kind of like the tamarind.
Yeah.
It's not completely unlike that.
Yeah, I think this could kind of fit there. I've read those before. I've never read those before. I've seen them though, like the philosophy of Star Trek. And,
I read, I think, The Science of Star Trek at some point, a long time ago. I guess by way of starting to get around to my argument about whether it's a classic, having influenced hundreds of books along that line, it's a pretty big deal. I don't know, I saw the similarities with Fight Club. I don't know how much of an influence it actually was. There's a lot of on the road in this, obviously, and all the other road trip type books that come out around that time. What other influences do you think this book has?
Has it made, or does it have?
Has it had on? Yeah, what future influence did it had?
I have no idea. I have to be honest with you. I'm totally drawing a blank on that.
Yeah. It said it was the best-selling philosophy book of all time.
Right.
Which I'm not. That doesn't blow my mind. That seems like it might be right. Have you ever read Sophie's World?
No.
It's very similar. It's like the story of a little girl, and it goes through the history of philosophy by a fictional narrative about a little girl. That one I think is kind of better in some ways.
Okay.
But this is before it, so you got to give it credit. It doesn't ramble as much, and it's not. I get annoyed with the guy for just going on and on sometimes, especially because he's neglecting his child. That drives me crazy.
Well, he's not neglecting him. The child's behind him as they're riding a motorcycle.
But he's not talking to the kid, and he's dragging the kid along.
Have you ever ridden a motorcycle?
Oh, fair enough. But I mean, when they're not on the motorcycle and they're hiking and stuff like that, he's still chautauquaing in his head. When I hike with my son, I take the time to talk.
But the kid always wanders off and
I guess
something like
that.
I
would too if my dad was silently pontificating about quality.
Well, do you remember at the end his son's saying, "All you do is think"?
I think silently pontificating is an oxymoron. I wish I hadn't used, by the way.
But that's what his son says. You don't do anything anymore. All you do is just sit there and think.
Right.
That's all you do.
Yeah.
And that's what he's been doing the entire time. So he hasn't been.
Which is why the redemption passage is really good. It did make me like the book a lot more. That it showed that he knew that this was all
right.
That Phaedrus wasn't the bad, unhealthy one. That the middle guy is the unhealthy one.
Right.
And then he goes back to that. And I don't know if I buy it, but I did like that better. That was a better thesis to the book.
The other interesting turn is that he is not at all in the moment of the adventure that he's on.
Right.
All he does is preach about being in the moment, motorcycle maintenance at Zen, everything else. And at the same time, he's totally missing, this
Someone
trip.
once said that someone else, their whole life, they looked away to the future, to the horizon, never their mind on where they were, what they were doing. I don't remember who said that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I believe he had something to do with Zen in some way.
Did he? Yeah.
And I think that's the conflict, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about mindfulness, but you're not being mindful.
Yeah, but you're not being mindful.
But your mindfulness
at the same time.
allows you to not be mindful, which is, I'm sure, kind of a koan in itself, right? Like sort of the ridiculous things that Zen talks about to give you enlightenment.
Right.
He doesn't talk about enlightenment at all.
No.
Although maybe the conversion back into Phaedrus is supposed to be.
He uses the word Tao a couple of times.
He uses the Tao, which is, I think,
Tao,
confusing something with Zen. I don't think this has much to do with Tao.
He did spend, he spent, I think, 10 years at a Hindu university in India, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
it doesn't really give us much about that.
He doesn't, but he's got the chops more than I do,
True.
But,
one of my friend's dads actually was ended up getting a
not a religion,
divinity.
a
Divinity scholar at Harvard Divinity School. And he had studied his whole life. He actually dragged his whole family to India. And my friend, I was like, oh, cool, you got to live in India. And he was like, no, it was awful. It's the poorest country in the world. It's a miserable place to be. Right. I was like, oh, it's such a terrible take on it. But yeah, you were a little kid that got dragged to this place for your dad's intellectual passions. I was like, this really reminds me of this kid, being dragged around, having to listen to his dad yammer on about quality.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of boomer in that. Although the guy's not really a boomer, the bad things about boomers. And I don't buy into bashing the boomers. I think they have a lot of great qualities. But this being so introspective that you screw your life up,
right?
That's a quality of that generation.
Well, the 70s, like I said, the 70s were big on that.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if it was the boomers leading it or the boomers following it. And there are other
this guy's a little older than a
gurus.
boomer, right? So I think some of these older guys, Kerouac's not really a boomer. A lot of these guys.
Kerouac's 58 though. That's a
when he
long
was
time
born
before.
though, he's older than that. Oh, you mean he was writing it?
Yeah, on
true,
the road
true,
was
true.
like
Well, I think
58.
a lot of these guys were an inspiration to the boom generation. They weren't really part of it themselves.
Right.
I think that's being so introspective and so quote unquote true to yourself that you forget that you have actual responsibilities. Like having a child, deciding to have a child and being a father is not something someone foisted on you because society has bourgeois values. Take care of your kids, man.
Right.
Like you owe them that. I don't have a lot of sympathy for that particular thing.
Sure.
Like abandoning your actual relationships to go to India and learn about something. But anyway, so
well, it's interesting. I mean, you could blame it on, and he sort of does, like electroshock.
Yeah.
It changed his personality because they tried.
and it was forced on him.
They tried to kill this other personality.
That's messed up. Yeah.
And so when they did that, you could argue that he became this completely rational thing.
Sure.
Kind of incapable of that warmth and the connection that he should have had with his son.
That's why I think the ending really does redeem the character throughout. Like the character throughout is pretty annoying. Yeah. But then you get to the end, you're like, oh, he's supposed to be annoying. I'm supposed to be annoyed by this person. And then I have more sympathy with the story.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, this is a better book than it was before that happened. Although I didn't think it was a bad book. I was reading it. I was enjoying it. Goes on a little bit. My least favorite bits are the parts where he's at school really getting into the nitty gritty. I don't mind him talking about Kant every once in a while and things like that. Stuff's fun.
The University of Chicago, you mean?
When he's at University of Chicago and he has like the big showdown with the professor there. And I was just like, first of all, it sounds like you're projecting your stuff onto this guy. I don't think this guy really had that much invested in this conversation. I don't think the whole class was watching you. What is that?
Agree.
Spotlighting. He's spotlighting on the whole class. Yeah. But again, it ends up being that he's supposed to be mentally ill. So maybe he's spotlighting. It's like true to the character. So I don't know. Did you hear about what happened to Chris? His son? His son he got
stabbed.
into a conversation with some guy and got stabbed.
Yeah, he got mugged.
1979. So
he got mugged outside of a Zen institute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is terrible.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Well, he got in sort of an argument. Yeah, it was a mugging. Yeah, that's right. It was a mugging. Yeah.
He was like 22 years old. That's why he had the child later in life, because he thought that it was kind of a reincarnation of his first.
Yeah, that was pretty dark. It reminded me of Stand By Me.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because the guy's named Chris, and he gets stabbed. So what was your biggest surprise?
So my biggest surprise was reading kind of the background of this and finding out that this book was rejected 121 times.
Right. Yeah.
And before some editor finally took a chance, it has sold, it's got to be more because there's 2 right here, but sold over 4 million copies in like 20-something different languages. So, smashing success, one of the most important books on philosophy, best-selling books on philosophy.
I think it's important to make the distinction between philosophical fiction and philosophy, though. I don't think this is a philosophy book. There's no systematic philosophy in this. You can't get his philosophy from reading.
Well, he writes another one. It's on quality.
You'd have to read. You'd have to read that.
That would be
the Leela something.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was.
I think that one's closer to a book of philosophy.
Philosophy book. Yeah.
But so I mean, just editors are idiots. I was rejected.
Please let us. Well, no, I've never even actually gotten to the editor stage. It's all the agents that.
Well, agents and editors, they're all idiots.
There you go. They're lovely people, and please buy my book.
Mine is very good.
Yeah, there you
the
go.
one I currently have. But see, it took me so many rejections to get to her, and I guess that's what happens is you just have to wait until the right person looks at it.
I think so.
And you just have to kind of persevere. And stories like that, actually, if you are a creative person, stories like that are important because they're kind of they're the mythos or the mythos as he calls it, that helps to get you to persevere, right? But that was really surprising to me.
Yeah, no, I mean it's not when you think about it though. I mean, when you read the book, you could see why it would be rejected. It's sort of. You're not sure it's going anywhere, and it's a little.
It's a pretty unique flavor, isn't it?
It's very unique, but I think it scratched an itch that was around at that time in a way that maybe wouldn't have been terribly predictable.
Right.
I'm rereading Harry Potter with my daughter right now.
Yeah.
And I heard about a rejection that J.K. Rowling got one time, where some guy just recommended a writing class to her. Yeah. And I'm reading the book again, and I'm like, he wasn't wrong. She did actually need to learn more about how to write.
Well, she became a better writer.
She became a much better writer
by the end of the series. Yeah,
but the idea itself was great. I remember I picked it up the first time. I love those books.
But that was another book that I think was rejected 50 times or 75 times or something like that as well.
So. Exactly. Yeah, but I'm going back and reading, and I'm like, he wasn't wrong. Like she probably, if she was in my writing group, I'd be like, work on this, work on that, But it's the underlying idea that carries it, and I think that's what's going on here. There's Except this is more like just hitting right when the iron is hot, you know, in society.
Yeah.
Like people were out there and they were like, ooh, Zen. I need to learn about Zen.
Yeah.
You know, what is Zen? Like, again, we mentioned Star Wars. I mean, it's like the Japanese philosophy is underlying it. People were fascinated with that stuff at that time, you know, like the East. Enter the Dragon, same thing. Right around the same time. Was it the year before?
True. Yeah, 74. Yeah, that's right.
So there's a fascination with the East and the West during those years. That,
for sure.
Maybe because of Vietnam.
Could be. I was just thinking
never
that
even really thought about it that way.
Just over there.
Might have just been encountering the East.
Right.
I mean, it was Japan, Korea, Vietnam, so it was a lot of encountering the East there for a few years. But anyway, my biggest surprise was I got towards the end of the book and I was reading some of the things he was saying about technology. And I was like, "What? Who does this remind me?" And I was like, "This sounds like the Unabomber manifesto."
I was thinking that too.
And I was
thinking the
and I was
exact
like, the
same
Unabomber
thing.
was from Montana.
Right.
And I was like, okay, all right. So I looked it up and I was like, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and Unabomber, just two queries.
I didn't do that.
And it came up, some guy wrote a paper from University of Montana comparing the two, the manifesto and this book, and like finding all kinds of parallels between them. And he says at the beginning, he says, the parallels were so strong that at one point, Robert Pirsig was a suspect to be the Unabomber.
Wow.
The FBI actually looked into him on the list of the people they thought might be the Unabomber. Wow. And I was like, okay, so I'm not crazy.
So the Unabomber was a professor. Where was he a professor at?
That's a good question. I don't think I know.
I
think it was maybe an Ivy, though.
Like Berkeley or something, wasn't it?
Maybe it was. Maybe not an Ivy, but yeah, something like that.
But
I might be remembering that completely.
So that guy
wrong,
went through a bunch of LSD studies as a student at, I believe, Harvard or Yale.
Ted Kaczynski did?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was part of this government-funded LSD studies where they fed him a ton of LSD to see what would happen.
Wow.
And most people speculate that's pretty much what happened to him. You know, that was
a lot of hyper-intelligent people go that way, though.
Yeah.
Their minds break. That's not, you don't need LSD to do it to you.
I think it could help push.
It could. Yeah, it certainly is going to help.
Come to a lot of conclusions that you probably wouldn't otherwise come to.
Although they actually prescribe psychedelics to treat mental illness.
Yeah,
more
that's like the what do they call it? The microdosing.
Yeah,
microdosing.
So I think we've come down to it. As long as we're good on time, I think we've come down to the point where we have to decide whether we're toasting or not. It's tough.
It's you. It's all you.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. Would I give this book to somebody and recommend that they read it?
You'd have to really like them. It's a long book.
It was a big influence on me when I read it at first because I think I was just going through a phase of road trip books were like what I was all about. And I think I probably kind of skimmed some of the philosophical stuff if I didn't think much of it. I don't remember understanding what happened at the end when I read it when I was a kid. I don't know. As a piece of the intellectual tradition and understanding what was going on in America in the 1970s, it would be pretty important. But we're fading pretty far from the 1970s. Right. I don't know how important that is to understand that particular time period, except for people like us that were alive then.
Sure.
It's rough. I don't think I would toast it.
Yeah, I agree.
You
I'm
think?
on board. Yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah, I don't mean to like put it down. I mean, I just because I'm glad I read it.
Yeah,
it's a great book to read for this.
But I think it was a
book.
book in its time. I mean, that's the thing.
Maybe a bit too much.
It was a classic in its own time, and I think you know,
it's a little pretentious, is what I find off-putting.
Well, it's pretentious now.
He mentions this. He calls himself out for this. It's megalomaniacal is what it is. He thinks he's so important and his ideas are so important. And I'm like, no, your ideas are not that important. Pay attention to your kid.
Right.
You're really doing a lot more damage to the world by screwing your kid up.
Yeah.
Than you would.
Although parenting, I mean, latchkey kids.
There's no guarantees.
Latchkey kids were a thing back then. I mean, parenting was a lot different. But I mean. Yeah. I would agree with you. I think that in its time, it was a really important book.
Yeah.
It was a classic. But the problem is it hinges on its philosophical novelism, meaning or uniqueness perhaps, or whatever you want to call it. And it was at a time when people generally weren't exposed to a lot of that.
I think so.
But I think we are much more today.
Yeah.
And
I don't really find a lot of novelism here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just seeing the same things people. I'm seeing him just recapitulate.
And not only that, we've grown beyond because the mysticism of the East and the philosophy of the East was fairly
exotic.
Exotic, right? But we've grown now to there's so much more out there that we're looking at and realizing how substantial these other or different cultures and their philosophies and their beliefs and so forth are, and how they influence things and have influenced things.
I think for a very young person to pick this book up and read it and to get some ideas about some things you might want to look into wouldn't still be I think that still might be fruitful. To just be like, oh, I should look up what Zen is. I should look up what the Tao is, But then again, I think people are getting exposed. Like you said, they're getting exposed to these ideas. Yeah. It's a lot easier to be exposed to these ideas than it used to be. You didn't need this one book to sort of turn you on to a bunch of stuff. You just kind of, I don't know.
All right. Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing it.
Have a shocker. We're not toasting this classic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we will be talking at you next time when we are going to talk about.
What are we doing? Oh, we are going to be going with the season, and the next thing is a movie, and it's a classic. Purported classic of horror.
Dave's pick here.
Called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh,
which
can't wait.
I just would have thought was garbage, honestly.
Yeah.
Growing up, just hearing that name, I was like, oh, that's not. But everybody says it's actually a really good movie. So
we will find out.
I'm down to watch it.
We'll find out. All right.
Do it.
So join us next time on Toasting the Classics, where we're going to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
A couple weeks before Halloween or a week before Halloween, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
For Toasting the Classics, this is Clint Lanier.
Dave McArthur.
And we are out.
Peace out.
Bye.
That's it for episode 28 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, get some Lone Star beer for our discussion of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you'd like to get in touch, please send us an email at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, comments, complaints, and your own tortured definition of quality. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @ractivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.